So, from the perspective of the agricultural wheel of the year, spring is officially here. I celebrate the dawning of spring on February 1st. And even though sometimes it's a little hard to notice the signs of the soil warming and the seeds starting to stir and the plants slowly moving back into our side of the hedge, this is a really auspicious and appropriate time to start considering how we are going to steward relationships with our plant spirits. So, whether you have a full backyard that you can garden, or access to an allotment or a community garden plot, or a little porch where you can put a couple of terracotta pots, I feel like you can absolutely grow herbs to work with. There is something so powerful about being in connection with a plant from seed or maybe sprout all the way through to the end of the year to harvest, at which point that plant is turned into medicine or magic, some form of remedy, to walk with them through those growing seasons, to be there as they grow, to be there as you harvest them after caring for them for so long, to being able to sit with them in person, heart to heart, and learn from them. This is really where the seed hits the soil in this work. And I wanted to start out with just that note of accessibility, because I realize that not everyone lives in a house or owns space where they can do whatever they want. I'm certainly one of those people. Sometimes we can have a pot of dirt, and that's, the space that we can tend. That's enough. If you can choose one or two plants only this year to grow and work with and sit with, you'll learn more about those plants. You'll be connected to those plant spirits, and you will receive guidance from those plants in a deeper way than 100 books could ever teach you. So whatever your situation is, whatever your space allowances are, your budget allowances, your physical abilities, get creative. There's no such thing as too little. If a windowsill pot is what you can do, please make this the year that you do it. This is a very, very good skill and understanding and connection app. So the point of this week's free Friday community class is I want to talk about this concept of having one or two plants from a variety of different energetic spaces in our lives. Now, again, you might only be able to choose one or two. That's fine. You're going to know what kind of energetics are the ones that you need most, your family needs most, your community needs most. If you are lucky enough to have more space, maybe you could choose one or two plants from every one of these categories and really be in connection to a full medicine cabinet, a full apothecary of herbs that you can turn to. I chose the herbs that I want to talk to today because of their ease and their friendliness, right? Some of these herbs are easier to grow, more forgiving, good for beginners, good for busy people who might forget to check in on them as often as they should. So the list is not exhaustive, nor are the energetics, but what I've done here is taken the 6 core energetics from the Western Vitalist, Physiomedicalist tradition, because they make sense to me, and added a few others that I think are important. And we're just going to move through them kind of quickly, and I'm going to give you some ideas of plants that you could grow. And the idea here is that if you have a couple plants from every one of these energetic categories, there is nothing that can pop up in your life that you won't have the medicine for. And I mean that on a physical, mental, emotional level, and I mean it in a narrative, magico, spiritual level, right? So that's kind of cool. So again, not exhaustive. If these plants won't work for you, you can use this as inspiration to go figure out who will. So let's start with our first energetic category, which is the aromatic herbs. And these tend to be herbs that are warming. They're a little bit stimulating in that they move things. They have a diffusing energy. They go through the body and they break up stagnation wherever it is. We think about aromatics a lot in the digestion and the respiratory system, but you will see me work with aromatic herbs to help break through congestion in the life path when people are stuck, when things have gotten boggy and sticky. As the name implies, they're also the herbs that smell good, right? They're herbs that are rich and volatile and essential oils, and we smell them and we're like, oh, those are delicious. And they're also the plants that get turned into essential oils the most, right? So aromatics. We want these herbs on hand to help with congestion in the respiratory system, to help with congestion up in the sinuses when we're recovering from a cold or cough, or when one is starting to settle in, when the lungs have become cold and frozen and damp and stagnant, and also in the digestive system. We are going to talk about bitters too, but a lot of these herbs are carminative, and they're going to increase the digestive fire, break up congestion or stagnation or food baby, right, in the belly, and kind of get things moving. So why would we not want these plants to turn to? So a couple of ideas. You can always just work with peppermint, right? Peppermint has become this herb that used to be nearly worshipped and now just gets overlooked. Like, people are just like, oh, peppermint, so basic. Peppermint is not basic, it's foundational. This is a plant that has shown up for us and been involved in the human drama since time immemorial. If you've been around here for a while, you're probably already sick of hearing me talk about mint and mint family plants and why they are the most important family. That Lamiaceae family is the most important family of plants for those doing plant spirit work, for those walking a plant spirit path to know. So let's start off with a good plant and say peppermint, right? You could also do fennel. Fennel actually grows really easy, really forgiving for a lot of people. I grow really beautiful fennel, and I am by no means an expert gardener. I think that fennel can be daunting to people because it gets really tall, and this is an herb with roots, and that we're trying to harvest the seeds, and it's a little more complicated. But if you've got the space, I think you can grow. Fennel. One other one that's really fun is angelica. Again, not everybody can grow angelica, but if you can, that's a really beautiful, magical aromatic plant that is so beautiful, so gorgeous, and such a fun one to have in the garden. A little easier would be thyme and maybe oregano. Both of these mint family plants are incredibly aromatic, very warming, very dispersing. I work with thyme a lot in respiratory steams to get in and break up mucus and congestion and phlegm in the lungs, and you just feel better right away. So there's a few aromatics for you. Then we move on to astringents, right? These are herbs that tone the tissue, they tighten and uplift. They move bogginess and excess fluid from tissues to somewhere else in the body, getting those tissues nice and strong, nice and toned again. Astringency usually happens because of tannins, right? So some astringent herbs are really rich in tannins, some are not. Not all of the famous astringent herbs, the tried and true astringent herbs are easy to grow. One of my favorite, for example, is oak. And so unless you have the ability to just grow an oak tree, that one's off the table. So here are a couple that are a little easier. First would just be sage. Common garden sage, Salvia officinalis. Guess which family sage is part of? Lamiaceae. This is a mint family plant, right? If this video doesn't convert you to being a devotee of the mints, go find my other classes on it, because they are the most important plants for us to work with. So sage, really beautiful, astringent. This is why we love to do mouth rinses and throat gargles with sage leaf tea when somebody's got strep throat, or you've got just like a raw, red, puffy throat from a cough or cold. Sage will go in there and tighten and tone everything and flush the inflammation out and squeeze out all the built up fluids, and then you spit that out, right? Put a little sea salt in there, you've got a very strong throat gargle. Also think about raspberry bush and blackberry bush, right? Especially raspberry. So here's like a dual gifted plant that when you grow these plants, they're both in the Rosaceae family. They're both related to rose. So they have soft, fragrant fruits, and they have 5-petal flowers, and they have thorns. These are very protective plants. So when we grow these bramble plants in our gardens, in our yards, the spirit is very protective. They watch over us. We can work with them for protection work. Raspberry canes are one of my favorite plant amulets for protection. We bundle them up and hang them over the doors to our home every year. So raspberries, of course, eat the berries. Blackberries eat the berries, but it's the leaves that we're working with medicinally for astringency here. So you've probably heard about folks drinking raspberry leaf tea to tone and uplift the uterus in preparation and recovery from childbirth, right? That's why. It's because it's astringent. Be mindful that a lot of astringent herbs can feel drying, but they're not, right? They're not taking moisture out of the body. They're just moving it from one place to another. So when people work with astringent herbs and they experience an excess dry response, the skin starts to flake or the mouth becomes like really dry, generally I say maybe astringent wasn't the right direction to go. Maybe there's something else going on, or we need to look at hydration. So demulcents, very crucial kind of plant to have around, right? And of course, the most famous demulcent, the most important one for us to work with for ethics and accessibility and ecology is marshmallow. Athea officinalis. Marshmallow is fantastic. We grow marshmallow here in the high desert. Technically, probably shouldn't do as well as it does here, but with a little TLC, we get marshmallow roots every single year right out of our little raised bed gardens. So think about marshmallow root. Violet is also a really easy one, really great ground cover, and comfrey. Comfrey, of course, gets really big, and there's some unfortunate negativity around comfrey that I don't agree with, but to each his own. So these demulcent herbs, especially when they're soaked in cool or room temperature water, impart a gooey, slimy mucilage to that water. And so we drink that, and that slimy mucilage goes all through our body and coats, right? So if you've ever touched or interacted with the inside of an aloe leaf, that really gooey, slimy, that's the vibe, right? So whenever we have raw, rough, irritated, exposed tissues, we work with demulcent herbs to coat, cool, soothe, and protect. Comfrey is one that most people will just work with externally, right? Giving that demulcent action to the outside of the body to help wounds knit and heal. Again, maybe we'll save that for a different class, but marshmallow and violet, these are really lovely ones for teas to take internally. Relaxant herbs, right? We need some relaxant herbs. So a bunch to choose from. Some of these are a little more picky about where they will grow. So you kind of have to do a little research and figure out who's going to thrive in a pot, who's going to thrive where you live. Skullcap, I would love to grow skullcap all day long, but skullcap should technically grow where I live, but will not grow for me. So, that happens sometimes. Lavender. Here's a really easy mint family plant that you can grow. Lavender is a fantastic relaxant. Passion flower, another, one's a little more hit or miss whether they'll do well for you. A lot of people can grow passion flower vines, but they won't actually flower, and it is the flower that we want. Vervain, really easy one to work with for most people. Hypericum, aka St. John's wort, and lemon balm, another mint family plant. Lemon balm, very forgiving, very easy. Will grow in a pot. Will grow indoors probably if you baby them. So here are some relaxant herbs that help take the buzz out of the nervous system. They tend to be mineral dense. They soothe the body. They relax the muscles. They tend to quiet the mind. They relax us. They find places in the body too where a particular process has become too active, too stimulated. The immune system is being too reactive. The thyroid is too hyperactive. And it relaxes them. It tells them, hey, you don't have to be at a 10 all the time. Just relax a little bit. Just come down, right? There are, of course, layers and layers and layers of nuances to that. But this concept of relaxation goes beyond just relaxing your mood or relaxing the muscles. And it actually relaxes the entire body system, depending on the herb that you work with. The flip side of that is stimulation, right? Sometimes we have body functions or processes or organs or systems that are underperforming. They're not working enough. They're being sluggish, they're being lax, they're being lazy, they're undernourished, they're under-energized, so they can't perform at their best. And so we want stimulating herbs, right? And stimulating herbs don't work the way that we think of stimulation in the West, right? It's not like a caffeine stimulation where you're jittery. It's stimulating action. It's stimulating effect, right? It's kicking them into gear. So stimulating herbs tend to be a little more exotic sometimes. They tend to be a little pickier herbs. They tend to be ones that we revere. But I will tell you one that is worth your reverence, that is worth your adoration, your love, your devotion, your prayers, and that is cayenne. Again, if you've been around here for very long, you've heard me talk about cayenne. Not too long ago, I did a big class just on cayenne here on YouTube, so you can go find that. This is one of the most important medicines I work with, is cayenne pepper. So much history, such an incredible way that this plant has found its way into all different parts of the world and made us fall in love with capsaicin and be obsessed with the heat. And cayenne is one of the best systemic stimulants that you'll find. And, pretty easy to grow. People can grow cayenne peppers in a pot. So there you go. And then rosemary. Rosemary is another mint family plant that's very forgiving, very easy to get going, and has a warm, activating, stimulating effect on the body to just kick things into action, whether it's an internal thing that needs to be fired up, or maybe there's a part of your life that's become a little cold, a little stagnant, doesn't have as much energy moving through it as you would like. So we work with these herbs and ask for their help in getting some things moving, getting the blood boiling, lighting a fire under ourselves a little bit. It's good. Last but not least, in the 6 traditional Western vitalist action categories, bitters, right? And people in the garden get a little shy about bitters because most of the bitters that we work with, are a little exotic, a little wild. But it doesn't have to be that way. Chances are, if you're a gardener, if you garden herbs, you already have some herbs that you can approach as bitters. So wormwood, right? Now, be mindful that wormwood is wildly strong. And when I work with wormwood in a bitters, it's like 2% of the bitters formula. It's like 1 leaf of wormwood in a tea, very, very strong, very, very contraindicated during pregnancy, right? This is an intense bitters, but we can't deny the fact that wormwood is one of the easier, Artemisia plants to grow. So if that's what you can grow, that's what you can grow. Dandelion, working with dandelion leaves as a bitter, right? So lovely in tea, lovely as a bitter addition to a salad or food. These are very, very easy. You can forage them. You can intentionally grow beautiful dandelions in your garden. Why not? And last but not least would be chamomile. Regular old chamomile. You might have expected me to put chamomile in the relaxant category, and we certainly could have. Chamomile wears many hats. But here we're invoking the bitterness of chamomile, and we do that by making a tea of chamomile and allowing that tea to oversteep. So we're bringing the water up pretty hot, not boiling, but pretty hot, and we're putting our big, beautiful chamomile flowers in there, dried, smell like apples. We put them in there, we cover that cup of tea, and we forget about it. We let it steep for 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and when you come back, maybe you want to add 1 leaf of wormwood to that, maybe, and you drink it. But if it's just chamomile after steeping that long, you will get all those beautiful bitter notes from chamomile. Bitters we work with to stimulate the digestion, to move food, to get the gastric juices pumping, to get the worm-like peristalsis of the bowels moving. So when there's food stagnation, indigestion, acidity, food baby, nervous stomach, bitters. When you had a really rough day and you sit down to dinner and you're still so wound up, you still have a knot in your stomach from all the crazy stuff happening at work, you're still in fight or flight, and you need to be in rest and digest, we work with bitter herbs to ease us out of that sympathetic responsive state, right? Very, very powerful herbs. So, Then a couple that are kind of outside of those classic six. And the first for me would be, we want in our garden some kind of an immune stimulant, some kind of an antiseptic herb that we can turn to during cough or cold or flu, right? Something that we can use to bolster immune response. So a really easy one is yarrow. Yarrow grows really beautifully for most people. The energetics are pretty neutral in my opinion, not really hot, not really cold. Yarrow is very diffusive and very antiseptic, and also has some diaphoretic qualities. So yarrow is going to relax the exterior of the body, allow the pores to open, which means that your body can more efficiently push out invading pathogens, both energetic and viral. Yeah, so this is very good. We want to stay really well hydrated with yarrow. We want to take a warm shower once we break a sweat. Rinse all of that off of ourselves. But yarrow, don't overlook yarrow as an immune stimulating herb, as an antiseptic herb. We've been cherishing this plant forever. Let's keep doing it. Boneset, this is a cool to cold immune stimulant herb. I love boneset for really hot, achy, painful, bone break fever, when there's a lot of pain, the skin hurts, the bone hurts, the head is pounding. This is a really good indicator for boneset. And then another really cool one would be echinacea. And echinacea is surprisingly easy to grow. It's perennial, so they'll just keep coming back every year. The flowers are gorgeous. And if you have even just one or two little stands of echinacea in your yard, you will get butterflies, right? They're butterfly magnets. You'll get the night moths, you'll get butterflies and bees, and why wouldn't we want that? So echinacea, I like to let them grow for at least 2 or 3 years before I go into the roots, harvest some of the roots, and then put the rest of the roots back in. Or just rotate your crops and add a new echinacea plant every year, and then harvest one every year. So every year you've got one that's 2 or 3 years old, right? Lovely. You want to chop those roots up finely and put them in a food dehydrator to ensure that they dry completely without molding, especially if you live in a damper climate. Here where I live in the high desert, that never happens. But I forget to mention that. And there are people who live places where there's more than 5% humidity. And they say, I harvested my echinacea root or my ashwagandha root, and I laid it out in a well-ventilated room, and it rotted. It's because it's too damp. So you slice it up, increase the exposure to air, and put it in a food dehydrator or next to a fan. Let's do one more with one herb, and this is because this is the most exotic of all categories, the adaptogens, those elusive tonic herbs that help protect us from the damaging effects of everyday stress, these herbs that help regulate the HPA axis and cortisol levels and get us out of fight or flight and build up our adaptogenic reserves so that we can be more resilient, and the things that come to us that normally knock us down suddenly become, we can just brush it off, right? Not many adaptogens are easy to grow. I can grow ashwagandha here where I live, but this plant won't survive the winters here. So I get roots that are 1 season old. They're not real big, not real beefy, but the medicine is still really good. So you could certainly look into, the eleutheros and the ashwagandhas and schizandra, maybe where you live. Of course, all of these plants are beautiful, but the one that's the easiest to grow seems to be the most aligned to what we're going through as humans in this moment. Shocker, mint family plant, holy basil, Ocimum sanctum, also known as Tulsi. You can grow an adaptogen in your garden, and you can grow an adaptogen in a pot, and you can grow an adaptogen that is delicious as a tea. Getting a few of these leaves every day into your favorite tea blend, harvesting throughout the year and drying those leaves completely, keeping them in a nice glass jar, drinking that tea whenever you need help settling back into your body, getting the buzz out of your nervous system, getting out of fight or flight, lowering your cortisol levels, right? What an incredible herb, and how lucky are we that Tulsi is so forgiving that she'll grow in pots. She'll grow in India. She'll grow in America with a little bit of love. And, if you are careful and mindful, you can bring Tulsi in over the winters if you have winter where you live. And she will winter down in a pot with a little light, little heater under her pot. And then once the weather's nice and warm outside, you take her back outside. We've had Tulsi plants live 7-8 years happily in a pot. So there you go. So the idea here is choosing plants so that whatever comes up in life, you've got a hot infection, you've got cold stagnation, you're overly stimulated, you're underperforming, you're anxious, you can't sleep, the digestion's wonky. You've got one ally in your garden that you can go sit with, you can go petition for help, and at the end of the year, you have all these beautiful plants that you can harvest with love and dry and label and put in little jars and say, I stewarded every single one of these plants. We were friends for a whole year. I watered them, I pruned them, I fed them. And now here they are in this jar in my kitchen, ready to help me when I need them most, right? And that is such a cool thing. You could also consider choosing herbs elementally, right? Which is kind of more how I work. It's weirdly almost harder to explain than going at it through the action categories, but you could choose herbs that embody the element of fire, air, water, and earth. And so when things are too cold and stagnant, you have fiery herbs in your garden to turn to, like nettles and cayenne. When things are too fluid and boggy and swollen and watery, you have airy herbs like fennel that will come in and dry, like sage that will dry things up and move the fluids out. When we become stuck and frozen and too earthy, we can turn to these, hot herbs to warm and stimulate and move. So very, very intuitive, just one of many, many languages that we use to connect with the plants and to connect with disease and to connect with the path of healing. We have, of course, the Tridoshic system of Ayurveda, the 5 elements and yin yang of traditional Chinese medicine. We have the 4 elements of traditional Western herbalism. We have the actions and energetics of Western vitalism. Find a language that works for you and use that language as you're in. So this, as per usual, went longer than I intended, but hopefully gave you some ideas. If you're gardening this year, if this is your first year gardening, if you are going to be planting intentionally plants that you want to work with as medicine or in your magical workings, share with me in the comments below. I want to know what people are growing. I want to know who you're excited to work with this year, to see every day getting bigger and bigger, to water, to prune, to sit and meditate with. Let me know who you're working with. With that, I'll send you out with blessings of peace and plenty. I'll see you guys next week.